Wow. Good to be here with everyone. I want to first thank Anzac for drawing in the crowd. He's a phenomenal guy. I appreciate him being here to speak. I had the pleasure of working with Anzac for a few years. I have to be honest, he's one of the best, not only one of the best producers in this industry, but by far one of the best guys. And so it was really fun to listen to him speak and see what he's done. And some of what I'm going to talk about, I guess, is my stuff up.
There's a clicker right behind you. Dude?
Let me see. Maybe it's just going to come up next.
You can always go over his again. Where's the audio guy?
Yeah, right?
You want me to take a look at it?
Let's see, is it? Let me see.
We're going to go and check home and check.
Well, while they look at that, I'll go ahead and start. I wanted to start a little bit and just give you a little background on my experience in door-to-door. If you ask my mom, she's going to tell you that I started my door-to-door career when I was about 5 years old, when I walked around the neighborhood selling all of my toys to all the neighbors, and she had to go round them up and buy them back for $0.25 a piece. So I guess in a way I've kind of had door-to-door in my blood ever since a very young age. My first taste of door-to-door was in the satellite industry in 2002, really about 16 years ago this month, because I started here in Provo, Utah. In the winter, I decided to sell Dish Network door-to-door. And back then, the industry was a place where we didn't have the DVR didn't exist, local channels didn't exist, you know, ABC, NBC, CBS, those didn't even exist on Dish Network at the time. So that gives you an idea how long ago it was that I started selling. And the company I worked with was a startup company here locally, and they gave me a few laminates and some material, and I went out on the doors, and I was able to, the very first door that I ever knocked on that answered the door, I was able to sell that account. And it wasn't without like 10 calls to the main office to ask a bunch of questions, because I really still didn't have any idea what I was doing. But I had a taste of some early success in this commission-based door-to-door industry, and it got me hooked. And so that's what I was doing while I was going to school at BYU studying business management. I'd go out in the evenings and I'd sell. And I did that leading up for that summer, and the company I was working with at the time, they asked me to go out and manage a team in Dallas, Texas. And so I learned how to install satellite accounts. I recruited a few people, didn't really know what I was doing. I was recruiting people to go do something I hadn't done yet. And so I get out to Dallas, Texas, and the company tells me, we need you to find installers. So I'm putting ads in the local paper to find installers. The very first Saturday I was there, I was installing my own job at 7 a.m. so I could get done and get back to a correlation meeting. Back in those days, my first summer selling satellite, I sold a couple hundred accounts. I installed about 60 of them myself. I was climbing on roofs and in attics and touching cable lines to my tongue to see if I was connected to the right receiver. I had to manage inventory. I was driving to Irving, Texas in U-Hauls to pick up boxes of Dish Network receivers and bring them back and check them in. And it was a pretty grueling summer. Tony Robbins talks about total immersion, and that's the best way to really learn a skill, and that was really what that summer was for me. It was total immersion into door-to-door, into the satellite industry, and it was a phenomenal experience. And I look back at that as such a foundational experience for me for the rest of my career in this space. After that summer, I decided to start my own satellite dealership. It's called Vision Satellite, and over the next 3 years, we did around 14,000 accounts, mostly in California. I was out in the field with the guys a lot. My first summer, I was still out selling and installing and in crawl spaces, and I had QuickBooks and my laptop, and I was cutting checks on Fridays for the sales reps, and it was really just a bootstrapped Mickey Mouse operation. I had no idea really where it would go, and I remember thinking so many times over my career in this industry, especially early on, like, how do I really build a bigger organization? How do I go from here to here? What's it going to take? And I really didn't know at the time. But one of the things I've learned the most in this industry is that if you are willing to work hard enough and you're willing to be committed and you can trust in yourself that you'll figure it out, and you just keep moving one step at a time, one foot in front of the next, you're going to improve. You're going to learn the things you need to know. I think a lot of people, when they try and start a business or they get into this industry and they get into door-to-door, they get a little paralyzed with fear, and that fear just causes them to quit before they could even see what they really could do. And that's one of the jobs as leaders in this industry, right, is to help other people overcome their fears, figure out how to help them get through those mental blocks and those challenges so that they can actually see the potential that they have. So the satellite industry was good to me. But in 2005, we had some of our satellite guys that were asking about selling alarms. We at the time didn't do alarms, and they were telling me basically, hey, we're going to go do alarms. We think there's more money to be made, so we're going to go work for XYZ company, and if you want us to stick around, then you need to start an alarm program. And I didn't know the first thing about alarms. In fact, for the previous 4 years, I was recruiting against the alarm industry, trying to tell everyone all the reasons not to do alarms. But we went ahead and started Vision Security at the time, and it was something I was always interested in, getting into the security industry, but never really had a timeline of when I was going to do it. I didn't know a lot about it. I remember talking to vendors early on when we were just launching the company and learning about the different products and acting like I knew what I was doing. It was the whole fake it thing, and I did a lot of faking in the early years of Vision Security. And by 2006, we had realized that I made the decision that we weren't going to be in the satellite space anymore. And one of the things that I think is really important that I learned is when I was recruiting for satellite, at least at the time, the recruiting that I did at the time was an attempt to try and get people to come and work and do satellite because satellite was easier. That's at least the way I presented it, right? And what I noticed in the security industry is that the conversations around security really had to do with more on if you're above average, if you're a killer, you can come and make so much money. That's kind of how the industry was at the time, talking about the potential. So the people that were attracted, at least in my experience, to the security space were those that believed in themselves and felt like they could go and make more money. And the people that I was working with in the satellite industry at the time, it feels like to me they were responding to the idea that it's easier, and so I'm going to do that because it feels safer. And this is in no way any sort of negative comment about any of the industries, because they all provide phenomenal opportunities. But what I noticed for me is that I wanted to work with those individuals who saw that opportunity as a career for them, and I felt like building a career in this space was going to be more exciting maybe around those people who wanted to go and they were hungry and they weren't looking at it as just a summer job. And so we started Vision Security. We became a dealer for security networks, and over the next I guess 7 years we did 90, 100,000 accounts. We were able to raise some bank financing. We kept about 17, 18,000 accounts in-house, and we were having a lot of fun, and it was a really fun time for us. And it didn't come without a lot of stress. In fact, I'll probably touch on a few other experiences of my time in the industry throughout the presentation, but that gives you a little taste of my time in the space. In fact, the reason why Anzac's probably the better guy to be up here for the majority of you guys in this room is because he has done things I will never do. I got into the security industry. I sold a decent amount of satellite, but when I got into security, I figured I better go see how hard or difficult or easy this is to sell. And I went out on the doors one day and I was able to sell one account, and that was it. That was my last sale on the doors for security. So I sold one account myself on the doors. I've gone on the doors with other guys and watched them and seen how amazing they are and learned from them, but that was it for me. And then I started Vision Security, and in 2014 we started conversations with some of the partners from Goldman Sachs and a private equity firm, and they had recently invested in the company NorthStar. And through those conversations, about a year later, we finalized an asset purchase where Vision sold the majority of its assets to NorthStar, and then I came on as a partner and the president of NorthStar, and I've been there for now 4 years. So that gives you a little background. I've gone from the door knocker that's installing and selling accounts to where now we're trying to build and grow a successful alarm program, and we've been in the dealer world where we're selling our accounts off, and now we're in the world where we own the accounts and we're trying to build value in our account base. And so I want to talk about a few things that I've learned over that time. And hopefully some of the things I have to share can relate to you, and they can be inspiring or insightful to help you improve your experience as you continue in this industry. I personally think the door-to-door industry is incredible, and I have a ton of gratitude for its existence. I mean, it's created a great life for me and my family, and I hope it's still around so my kids can go out and knock doors, because the things that are learned on the doors are far greater than any school education that I believe anyone can get. And so it's exciting to see so many people in this room, and it's cool to see that Sam has put together this whole program to try and unite and learn from the best of everyone. So I'm honored to be here, and I'll take a few more minutes and then we can do some Q&A in a little bit. But one of the first things that I think is important, and I saw Anzac asked a question of how many guys are reps. There's probably some guys who run their own. How many people are in here that run their own alarm company in the audience? So there's several hands. So we've got a mix of people running their own alarm business. We've got guys who are sales reps, and I'll try and tailor the conversation today to be of value to both, even though the majority of my time in the security industry, other than those 2 hours in St. George in 2007, I haven't been on the doors. So one of the first things that I think is important is knowing who you are. And this is a small enough audience, I think we can kind of have it be a little bit interactive. Anybody have any idea what that means, or what does that mean to you if once you read know who you are? What does that mean as it relates to this industry and what you do?
Be authentic.
Be authentic, okay?
Know your strengths.
Good. Know your strengths. Why is it important to know your strengths?
So you can play your cards right.
Good. Good.
Knowing your weaknesses and where you can either mitigate them or outsource them or whatever, depending on what they are.
Perfect. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses. When you know your strengths, you know where to focus and how to add value to the people around you. If you understand your weaknesses, you know how to backfill and hire and surround yourself with the right people to make up for those weaknesses. And you also know where to spend time developing yourself, right? I think one of the things about this industry that's the coolest is that to be successful in this industry, you have to spend a lot of time on yourself. You have to. You have to learn, you have to study. Anzac spent 7 hours a week on listening to books and just digesting all the positive, beneficial information he could get. You have to really understand yourself, know what your limits are, push your limits, and knowing yourself, both on a personal level and then knowing yourself from a leadership standpoint, are both very, very vital. And when you know yourself, you can then set a direction for what you want to accomplish. And when John Maxwell is a phenomenal author. One of my favorite books, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. But he says to grow yourself, you must know yourself. And I think that's very applicable if we want to be able to know yourself. Because as you grow and you become better and you learn more, you really find out what you're all about and what you're capable of. In the alarm industry, I want to talk a little bit about knowing yourself on a company level, and maybe talk for a couple minutes about the alarm industry in general. This next slide is a little bit of an industry overview. If we look at the security industry and how it's broken up into the different types of creation, if we want to call it the different types of accounts that are created, you've really got three main spaces in the security industry. You've got your DIY space, which consists of some of these companies you'll recognize: Simply Safe, Ring, Amazon, Smart Things, FrontPoint. You've got your monitor it yourself space. And the two of those combined currently make up about 15% of the whole security industry. The rest of the industry is made up with this professional install and service segment. And there's a lot of companies in that space, and it's what the security industry has been for a long time. And a lot of people see all these DIY companies coming, and maybe it creates a little bit of fear and uncertainty, and what does that mean for the industry? In my opinion, the importance, again, of playing on that idea of knowing yourself, if you know who you are as an organization, you can better survive in the industry, because when you're not trying to be everything to everyone, you can be really good at what you do, right? And for us, the segment that we focused in is the professional service and installation segment of the industry. And in my opinion, I believe that that industry is just getting better and better. And I think those of you in this room that go out and sell on a regular basis, you're seeing that the customer acceptance of the products and the smart home products and the service, there's more awareness around it. It's getting better. There isn't any feeling that I've seen of any slowdown in the number of customers that are interested in what the products that we have to offer. So what I think is happening in the space right now is I think the security industry is actually getting bigger. The pie is getting bigger. And while the DIY and the MIYs, they might take up a little bit more of, they may get a larger percentage of the pie I believe is getting bigger, which allows for all of us, because over the last 20 years, the security industry has penetrated 15-20% of the total market. And there's been a lot in that time of accounts that go from one company to another and so on and so forth. So there's some churn that happens within the industry, but I believe what's happening in the market right now is there's becoming more awareness, it's getting bigger, the pie's getting bigger, and if you really know who you are and which part of the industry you want to play in, and you do it very, very well, then I think there's a ton of longevity in this business. And it can be really exciting for years to come. So that's what we focus on. We focus on providing a high level of service. When you think about it as a sales representative, your ability to provide a high level of service in what you do and how you talk to customers and the experience that you create for them plays a huge part in your ability to succeed in the industry as well. So knowing yourself, knowing your industry, knowing the value in the product that you're trying to provide is extremely vital, in my opinion, for success in this industry. I've had a lot of talented, amazing people, Anzac being one of them, work with me over the years, and I can't express enough the importance of this topic right here of building the right team. In the book Good to Great, it talks about getting all the right people on the bus, but it also talks about getting the wrong people off the bus, right? What do you think one of the biggest killers of a successful team is? Laziness, negativity. Yeah, but he sells a lot of accounts, so I'm going to put up with it. But long term, what's the best course of action in building a team or a successful organization? It's surrounding yourself with people who are on the same team, who are moving in the same direction, who have the same desire, work ethic, etc., and getting rid of the people who don't belong on the bus. When I was in 2002 actually, my first summer when I sold door to door, I had a college roommate, his name was Dan Noble, and he did the accounting program at BYU, and I had actually talked to him about starting my satellite company with me. Well, I was out in Texas, he was finishing his MBA, and I was like, let's start the satellite thing, I know how to do this, you're a smart guy, you're accounting and whatever, let's start a company together. And I got home to Utah, we had all the dealership application papers ready to go, and Anzac, I said your name a few times. Dan decided to take a job at an accounting firm called PricewaterhouseCoopers, and he left me and I went and just started the company on my own. In 2007, I was able to get Dan to come back and work with me as our CFO of Vision Security. And by far, he was the best person I've ever brought on board from an operational and executive standpoint. And just recently, actually, some news for those of you that haven't heard in the industry, as of yesterday, Dan was named the new CEO of NorthStar. Pretty excited about it. Yeah. For those of you that don't know Dan, hopefully someday you get to know him, but he is an extremely talented and fun and smart guy, and I'm excited to work with him and the things he's able to do, but we're excited about it. But he is an example of one of, in my experience, of putting the right people on the bus. And when you're talking about sales team, we talk a lot about building the right sales team. And a team, in order to have a team be successful in the summertime specifically, or year round, or however you do it, you have to have key players on that team, right? We've made the mistake several times over the years of we got a really strong manager and he's able to recruit a lot of people, so he's got himself, maybe another veteran rep, but he's got a lot of rookies, right? And we send them out and we have high hopes, and then what happens? They struggle. The rookies don't get the attention they need, the belief system in the team doesn't exist on the level that it should, And so over the years, it's one pitfall that I wish I had learned earlier in my career, is that when you want to build a sales organization, you have to have the right people, you have to put them in the right place, and every team that you build, there are position players. Just on a football team, like a football team, there's a quarterback and a defensive end and a running back and a wide receiver. To have a successful sales team, you have to have all these components. You have to have veteran reps that can help set the pace. Ultimately, the objective that I believe in creating success on a sales team is the belief system within that team has to be at a very, very high level. And in order to do that, it really comes down to the people that are on the team, creating that belief system. So I want to talk a little bit about measuring the key metrics. And, you know, I operate more in the sales world and recruiting and sales leadership training, that kind of stuff. But what I've learned is that there are key metrics in every aspect of the alarm industry. You can talk about metrics on a high level of managing, you know, attrition and number of accounts and all that stuff, which we'll talk about. But also, there's key metrics in recruiting. There's lead measures. How many contacts are you talking to? How many of those people are you interviewing? And if you don't measure all of these things, that on a close level, you can't really manage it, especially if you're in a leadership role. If you're not measuring the progress of your sales reps and how many hours they're on the doors and how many doors are they knocking and, you know, how many walkthroughs did they do and how many times they get down to the table to close, how many credit checks did they run. There's so many different key metrics that you can really get a lot of data, use that data to get a lot of insight on how to better train your people. Right? If you can see that data, then you can manage it and you can train according to the data that you've gotten from your sales organization. So we do a lot of that. We measure the key metrics. On a high level, on a company level, we use this acronym called GEAR. And GEAR there's four elements of this, and I think this acronym GEAR really, in essence, if you can hit on all these metrics, you've created a very valuable organization. And if you're missing any one of these, your company value is going to suffer and the team potentially is going to struggle. The first one is growth. But in the time I've been in this industry, at least 12 years now in the security space, I've seen a lot of companies come and go, and those that weren't able to survive the industry have stopped kind of right here. They focused on growth, and it's been kind of a grow at all cost approach. That's all they talk about is growth, growth, growth. And there was a time in the security industry where everyone was kind of measuring each other up with how many accounts did they do and how many did they do, and then they're going to try and copy them and they're going to do this and they're going to try and that's all everybody worried about was growth. And there were so many important metrics of the business that were forgotten in that. And the second category here in the growth in our GEAR acronym is efficiency. Anybody have any idea what efficiency means in this industry or what it could mean?
Dollars and cents.
Dollars and cents. True.
Creation cost.
Good. Creation cost. Anything else? Creation cost is how much money we spend to create every new account, right? That's what creation cost is. It's that variable expense that only exists because you're creating accounts, and then how much are companies spending to grow. So what's happened in the security industry is that companies for a long time, even on a high level, even the big companies, dealer programs, have focused so much on growth that they have compromised the value of their business because they've forgotten this. They thought accounts are worth more than they were worth. In fact, you know, Security Networks, when I was a part of Security Networks, we were their largest dealer for 6-7 years, and they had a massive sale to Monotronics, and it set this value of accounts. And I think at that time, companies in the space decided, well, if accounts are worth more, we're going to pay more. And everybody kind of got a little bit aggressive with how they were compensating dealers and sales reps, and that has driven a lot of volume, but at what expense? We're starting to see now that companies are hurting. They're hurting because they've been spending too much money for too long, and they're now trying to start cutting back, and they're trying to find ways to reduce cost. Another area in efficiency is just your EBITDA margin. If you're owning accounts and you keep accounts in-house, you have to measure what percentage of the money that you're bringing in every month is going out in expenses. In other words, if you didn't create any more accounts, how much are you spending to manage those accounts? And you have a variety of costs there, service costs and monitoring costs and your alarm.com or your alarm net costs and all those different fees that go through, and then just your general overhead. But if you don't run a pretty lean business on that aspect, if you think about the alarm industry and you're bringing in $50 a month, let's say, per account, and you spend, you know, these dealer programs are buying these accounts for, you know, in the 30 plus multiples. If your EBITDA margin isn't very strong, it's going to take a really long time in order to recover that investment. And that's what's happening in the space right now. Companies are trying to figure out ways to cut cost, lower cost, and operate more lean so that the return on the investment can be strong. And that's what we need for the industry to continue to be healthy and create opportunities for all of us, is we need the industry to be strong. And so we hope that all the companies can figure out how to come around and do those things. But efficiency is just as important as growth. The next one's attrition. And in my opinion, attrition on a company level is, obviously it's important. If the attrition's high, the return on investment's low, and you know, you don't get your payback when you need to. But on a rep level, let's talk about that. Why does attrition matter for you guys? Chargebacks? Those sting a little bit? Yeah. Why else does it matter? You lose the money you made. You made money, made $500 on a deal, you lost the account, you lose your $500. Why else does it matter though?
Mindset.
Okay, mindset?
The company stays in business.
Right. If you have a high level of attrition this is the thing, is the industry has changed a lot to where, you know, Anzac was talking about his attrition. He said, that's the most important thing for me. He did 563 accounts, and he was more concerned about the fact that his attrition was in low single digits. What does that say about him? He understands the importance of creating value for the company he works with. I'd love to see high production. I want to see guys come in and put on hundreds and hundreds of accounts for me, but they'll be gone in an instant if that attrition isn't up to snuff, right? Because they're creating a bigger challenge for us if they can't put on good, high quality accounts. And if attrition is high, it usually affects this next category, which is reputation. Why is reputation important? Ryan, you've been in the industry for a while. How important is reputation today versus 5 years ago?
Everything.
Right? When I was working with this acronym, I actually got part of it from Rich Perry, who was a CEO of Security Networks, but they called it GEAC, G-E-A-C. And they had efficiency, and they had growth, and they had attrition, and their last one was creation cost. Well, it's a whole new era right now in the security industry, especially. The industry has become much more scrutinized with social media and web presence and attorney generals and everything else that exists out there. The ability to maintain a strong reputation is paramount, both on a company level and on a rep level. The last thing the sales reps want to do is go work for an organization where the reputation online is poor. You go work hard and you get in the home and you spend all that time, and then all of a sudden they go, hold on, let me go do a little search over here and see what I can find, and then you're like, oh no. You don't want them to do that. But if the reputation's great and the company's maintained a good reputation, then it can be a source of strength. Yeah, go check it out. Go look at us. We've got great reviews on all the sites. It can be a huge win for the sales organization if the company can maintain a strong reputation. In addition to that, the company value is highly affected by the reputation of the organization. And in my opinion, sales reps also have a reputation that they should uphold in order to find the most success in the industry. I want the guys who have a strong track record and a strong reputation. And you want to surround yourself. Those are the right people to put on the bus. The ones that have been in the industry for a while and have been able to maintain a strong reputation. So I want to talk just briefly about culture. In my opinion, culture eats strategy for lunch. You've probably heard that quote before, but culture eats strategy for lunch. What is the strategy of the industry we're in? Our strategy is we knock doors. We sell security systems, right? We sell protection and ease and simplicity and connected to your home. That's our strategy, but without a strong culture, the strategy doesn't mean anything. And leaders create culture. Culture drives behavior, and behavior then produces the results. And the cool thing about culture is that if you can develop the right culture, one by where it's intentional and by design, then you can create this cyclical experience. And the experience that the people have that work with you really is indicative of the culture that you've created. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from a movie, Remember the Titans, when Julius, he's talking to, I can't remember his name, but they're talking about the attitude, and he's leaving everyone out to dry, and Julius says one thing to his co-captain, and he said, attitude reflects leadership, Captain. And to me, that's huge. If you look at the sales organization that you have, or the team that you're a part of, if there's any sort of negativity in that organization, if there's poor work ethic, whatever it might be, that attitude that exists is going to be reflective of the leadership that is there. Leadership is influence, for good or bad, right? And it's our jobs and it's our opportunity in this industry as we bring more people into the space to create a strong experience for them. So the first thing you have to do, there's 3 quick things. One of the things I tried to figure out for a long time is, how do you really create a culture? Does it just happen? Or can you actually control it and create it in a way that you want it to? Well, there's either culture by design or there's culture by default. And culture by design, the first thing you have to do is define it. And the cool thing about culture is it can kind of go wherever you want it to be. It can be in your sales organization, it can be in your home, it can be in what sports teams. I'm going to give you a quick example. My family, we've created a little bit of a culture within our home. And we came up with this little statement that it really defines the beliefs. And when you define your culture, it can be a few words, it can be several words, but the important thing about defining your culture is you have to really believe it. It has to be part of your DNA. You have to know that it is everything. So I'm going to show you a quick little clip of my little boy. This is a couple years ago. Oh no, we don't have volume. Well, I'll tell you what it says. Sorry it didn't come across the way I'd hoped it would. But our family motto and our belief is, we're smart, we're kind, we're brave, we're funny, we work hard, we never give up, we love each other, and we help other people. And my 3.5-year-old son has it down to a T. So the important thing, once you've defined your culture, you have to preach it. You have to tell it over and over and over. Everybody has to know what the culture is of your organization. Has to be preached. We talk about it at night before we go to bed. I ask my kids what our culture is when we're dropping them off at school. And that, if you define it, but then you forget to talk about it, it really doesn't mean much, right? What you promote, or what you permit, you promote. If you're permitting things to happen that aren't in congruence with your culture, then you're promoting it. So you got to promote, you got to preach the right stuff, and then you have to live it. Probably one of the most important parts of the culture is to actually live it, because then that reinforces the behavior with everyone in the organization. It's been a pleasure for me to be here today. It's been the industry, guys, is phenomenal. I love it. I hope that if there's one other thing I could just touch on is just be grateful for this industry. And whether you are running an alarm company and you're selling accounts to somebody else, build value for that in that relationship. If you're a sales rep or a manager and you work with individuals, and for whatever organization, you need to build value in the relationships that you have. As long as you build value, those relationships can last for a long, long time. It's the minute we start taking too much that those relationships become imbalanced and the end is near. So build value, appreciate and be grateful for what you have. Go be strong leaders and help. This industry can help many, many people change their lives, and we all get the opportunity to be a part of it. Thanks, guys.